Tell me when we're rolling.
You are rolling and Carol is on.
All right, great. Glad you made it back, Carol. All right, we'll call the City of Olivet Planning Community Design Commission for October 15th, 2020 to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Rob Jurgel.
Present.
Carol Wagner. She's on mute. Carol, you're on mute.
Maybe raise your hand.
I'll come back.
Yeah, that's good. Come back to Carol.
I'll come back. Jody Rich, present. Richard Brophy.
Absent.
Excuse.
Brian Lewis.
Present.
Michael Saunders.
Present.
Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
And Carol Wagner.
I think she's having trouble. Oh, there, maybe she is. Carol, are you present?
I'm present. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Great. All right. Now that we've called roll and we have quorum, we'll go ahead and kind of start this process, and I'll give everyone a little bit of an overview of how we do things now on Zoom. I mean, we're getting better, but bear in mind there's always little challenges that we face. So bear with us as we go through this. If you do have any questions or comments, there's a place down at the very bottom where you can, raise your hand or list a chat or list a question in the chat. We do have an item for public comments. So if you have any public comments and you want to raise your hand right now, that would be great. But we'd rather, if you don't, if it's a comment related to anything on the agenda, wait for that agenda item, and then we'll also ask for comments there. And if we go through and you're still typing your comment, we'll probably revisit any public comments at the very end too to get that addressed. So that being said, if there's Carlos, are there any public comments?
At this moment, Chairman, no one's raising their hands and there's no open questions. If you can just give it 1 minute.
No, that'd be great. And looking at the agenda today, we don't have any old business, so we won't have to go through that. So once we give it time, we'll probably go right to new business. So Carlos, let me know when we're ready.
Okay, Chairman, I think we're set. I see no questions or comments.
Okay, great. All right, we'll go to item A, and this is 704 Grayley Lane. Petition type is a site plan, community design and concept storm water management plan review for a 560 square foot rear addition covering a patio. The petitioner is Kent Smith. The property owner is Kent Smith and Diane Eisenberg. And I forgot to mention this. When we go through these agenda items, the staff will go through a report on this, and then we'll have discussions amongst the commission members. We might ask questions to the staff members about their report, and then we'll probably bring on the petitioner to further ask some questions. So sorry I didn't go through that earlier. All right, Carlos, go ahead.
Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and forward the reins to Jonathan. He should be able to share his screen and he'll introduce a petition.
Yes, I am. Ba-dum-pum-pum. Try that again. There it is. Sorry, 1 second.
You know what I forgot to do, guys? Before, I forgot to mention who else is in attendance beside the board members that were listed on the roll call.
City Manager Barbara Sondag.
Is she on?
As a attendee, not a panelist, but attendee, yes, she is here.
Okay. But I didn't mention that Missy Waldman, City Council person liaison, is in attendance, as well as Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning and Community Development, Jonathan Roper, Planner / GIS Coordinator, as well as Bridget Walters, the Administrative Assistant. So sorry about that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us for the PCDC meeting for October 15, 2020. The first item on the agenda we have is 704 Grayley Lane, and I apologize, that is not a new home. It's a residential addition. The addition is a covered patio. A patio exists to the rear of the home, and a patio exists in the rear of the home, and they are proposing this covered patio addition. It's roughly 573 square feet. It's before the commission due to the size on a lot that is between 10 to 20,000 square feet. A lot is administratively can be approved up to, or an addition can be approved up to 500 square feet. So in this case, it exceeds the administrative review by 73 square feet. Therefore, it's before the commission today. Also, as the site did not meet the, I believe it's the lot width by just a little bit of a few feet, that it's also required site plan review as well. Also, any building addition that's over 400 square feet goes to concept stormwater management plan review. So we'll first start with the elevations. The elevations are before you. We have a rear elevation on the top and the two side elevations on the side. I'm going to use my anoint tool. So this is the existing part of the house here, and this roof line here is the addition, along with the here's the covered patio here, steps that go down. On the right side elevation, here's the existing house. This is the front of the house, and this is the rear, the new rear covered patio over here. And on the rear addition, you can see it over here. The one thing that stands out for staff is that the height of the covered portion of the patio is going to be roughly 16 inches above the existing roof line of the house. Now, under the SR zoning regulations, a house height can go up to 35 feet. So within zoning regulations, it is compliant. Staff did note to the biggest thing that staff saw was just a question of why the covered patio portion needed to be higher than the existing roof line. And I believe the petitioner, or I'm sorry, the contractor noted that it was something to do with the structural component of the roof where they're tying in is the reason why. That's, as they mentioned there. Going to the next slide here regarding the site plan, the site planning side. It's really, staff really didn't have concerns with the placement of it. There's an existing patio right around here. There's plenty of spaces between other properties, so it really doesn't, and the elevations are relatively similar to the one to the neighbor to the south here. So staff really didn't have concerns about the placement on the site plan. Regarding stormwater, it is over an existing patio, so there's really not new impervious area or runoff to be generated. However, there probably would be downspouts on here, which this one would be less of a concern, and they have a pool right here. And this one here looks like there's a little bit of a swale going towards the rear here, which that's where water is going there currently. Staff would also note that earlier this year, this house, well, a building permit was issued for interior renovation. So it's really a complete complete gut job on it. And they also added a little bit of roof area in the front and in the rear. So for that, which was administratively approved earlier, they did put in, because they did require, they had new impervious area they were adding. So they did add 3 stormwater flow wells here to take in the roof area of the house. So per the building permit, they did mitigate stormwater. Here's the motion here. There aren't any special conditions there aren't any special conditions in place here, just the normal submit for a building permit and the plans be within conformance with that. But if the commission has any questions or comments at this time, and the homeowner is on.
Okay, it looks like we're having some echoing. Any idea? Does anybody else hear that?
Jonathan, I think Jonathan.
Can
We're trying to
everyone else
work,
mute themselves?
we're trying to coordinate with Carol, so,
That could be a phone. Okay.
yeah. So,
And okay, I think no, we're not good.
okay, now?
Hello?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
good
great.
now.
Okay.
Okay.
And just so if I can intervene, Carol, we can see you, and then I see your phone, but I've manually placed you on mute, and just raise your hand, and I'll mute your phone when you're ready to speak. Sorry about that, Chairman and Jonathan.
No worries.
No problem. So at this
Okay.
time, the petitioner is on, the homeowner is on, and I'm open for any questions or comments the commission may have at this time.
Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Jonathan before we bring on the homeowner? Okay, I don't see any. Does let's go ahead and bring the petitioner on. That'd be great.
Okay, the petitioner should be coming over in just 1 second.
Hey, I'm muted, I think.
Okay, you're now on for 704 Greeley.
Hi.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good,
Okay,
good.
let's see if you can see us.
Can you see us?
No, because it would be right here. Hold on. Not yet.
No.
Can you hear us yet?
We still can hear you, which is great, but we can't see you.
Okay.
And that
All right,
may
well-
not be that big of a deal.
That might be a good thing.
It might be a good thing. Right now, you got Kent and Diane Smith and our contractor, Fred Reinhold on. So if you have any questions.
The only question I think is going to be related to the height versus why it needs to be extended above the roof line of the house.
Okay, that's a good question. The patio's been existing there, and they want to cover the patio. They have direct sun coming down all year round, and
Not yet.
they want to get it some shade. So we're doing a big rebuild here.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. I told you might not want to see it. But anyway, the patio is 36 foot wide. So when you do a 412 pitch, which is almost the minimum you want to do when you got snow and ice and water, half that span is 18 foot. So you take 4 times 18 foot and it comes to 72 inches. The house is long, it's 83 foot long, but it's only 28 foot wide. So you take half the span of that width and it's got a 412 pitch on it also. And that is 56 inches. So when I span the patio with a 412, the total height in the center is 72 inches. And when I span the house, the existing roof is 56 inches in the center. I did do this. I wanted to show you, it's not that big of a piece. I cut the Dutch hip for you. It's right here. This, can you see this?
Yes, we can. It's great.
Okay. This piece will actually come up the existing roof and lean toward the rear. So you're not going to see, in the front of the roof, from the street, you're hardly going to see any of this.
Right.
But
I agree.
I understand your concern, but there's a reason is you really, in this neighborhood with the snow and ice and water, once you get below a 412, even the roofing companies, they'll want to do something different to your roof. They won't want to do a regular shingle, it's not a good building practice to go below a 412. And
Okay.
anybody in the building business knows that. And so I kept the minimum that I thought was safe for any kind of leaks or ice or snow. And with that, because the house is so long and narrow and the patio was 36 foot, if you do the math, it's 1 foot 4, 16 inches higher than the front roof. But we're just not going to go up and plane it off. We're going to take that Dutch hip and lean it toward the back, and you run your valleys through those corners, and it'll actually blend in with the front roof coming up.
Okay. Okay.
It looks really good. It's a Dutch hip.
Does anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments for the petitioners online?
Mr. Commissioner, this is Mike. I just a quick question, and I think the answer is going to be obvious, but I assume you're proposing to use siding that matches the existing siding on this addition on the gable ends?
It's brick.
It's all, say that, did you ask me?
The gable end of the new covered, yes. Is that going to match the existing siding?
Yes, there's brick around the front. We're doing a total remodel. It's brick and stone in the front, and then the back is siding with some stone up to the bottom of the windows.
Got it.
You can see it in the picture. The gable end, if you're asking me, the back of the covered patio, the gable end will be siding to match the back of the house.
That was a question. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, being that I don't see any, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mike.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the petition for community design, site plan review, and concept stormwater management, and the concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition at 705 Grayley Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 15th, 2020, subject to any staff conditions noted herein.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mike Saunders and seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
And the motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Smith and Ms. Eisenberg. Appreciate you coming online.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You guys
Thank you.
All
have a
right.
good night.
Okay, we'll move on to item B, which is 828 Newcastle Drive. Petition type is a site plan, community design, and concept storm water management plan review for a new single-family home. Petitioner is Helmert Weber. Property owner is Helmert Weber Construction Company. Jonathan, is this you?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. And the second item on the agenda is 828 Newcastle Drive, the new single-family home. New single-family homes go through automatically a community design review with the commission, also a concept stormwater management plan review, as well as, in this case, site plan review due to the lot size not meeting the minimum 15,000. It's just shy by, it's at 13,195, and the lot depth On this case, it's a corner lot where you have Newcastle Drive on your west and Hastings Drive on your north. And on a corner lot, the opposite end of the frontage that is the longer. So this one's actually a little bit longer than this one. So this is considered the rear and this is the side yard setback. But the lot depth measured here is shy of the 150. It's around 117 feet. So it's looking at site plan review as well, and site plan review looks at reasonable steps to minimize negative effects due to, in this case, because of the lot depth and the size, whether the negative effects of a new development on the surrounding properties regarding stormwater. It could be regarding stormwater, landscaping, and a few other items that are on the screen here. These are the elevations that we have for you today. So we have the Hastings, which is a what would normally be considered the left side elevation is the Hastings front elevation. So we do treat it as a front. Here's the Newcastle side, the rear, and the south right side here. Staff notes that there is technically speaking, a 3-car front entry garage on, again, the garage side is going to be here with the driveway. And looking through the community design review, we used the guidelines to develop the review. And one item staff notes is the massing in the roof. The massing compared to the 1-story house just to the south here. So this is the existing property on here on the left side, and here is an existing that to be torn down and rebuilt. This is the existing 1-story home to the south. And you can see the site cross section here that there is the subject house is a little bit higher in grade. And so the massing principles, as you can see on the right side, discuss stepping down the roof when you're next to a 1-story home. So it discourages the straight 2-story one wall, and it encourages a break in there, which this would not abide by. That's why we not saying these are guidelines for the commission, so they're not zoning as in something that's hard concrete rules, but there are guidelines that staff brings to your attention. Also under the roof guidelines, it talks about doing a hip roof, or just lowering the roof angles at least when you're next to a 1-story home, which this one does not add in there. Regarding the front side on Hastings, the guidelines note under materials that they usually express at least 50% of masonry on a front facing elevation. This Hastings front does not, so we did go through one revision on the architectural review, which at first it didn't really have any brick except for this brick veneer on the side, but this is what the architect and the developer came back with, which is a 3-foot brick ledge, which does not meet the 50% brick. Staff notes another house just down the street, which is a corner lot at 9723 Hastings, which does have the full brick on the lower level, or the first level, I should say. Also the note, and looking at the elevation, staff was less sure about the articulation on the right side elevation, as you have a, you kind of see from the site cross, whoops. As you can see from the site cross section that, here's the top of foundation, and then you have a little bit of a grade there. So you're going to have a little bit of the exposed on the lower level side, but you also have this big roof area here. So it was kind of like looking at one wall, a lot of just siding, a few windows with no trim or anything around that. So that's why staff brought up the elevation articulation on that side there. And lastly, regarding that, so the driveway, it's a 3-car garage with this space in the middle here, which they're proposing a 28-foot width driveway off Hastings, and staff looks at, you know, what have some other houses done with a 3-car garage. So this one here is just on the other side of on Hastings, where they have a 3-car garage. That part's recessed there, but they have this little area that rounds here, so you're not getting a full length of a 3-car garage. Is that good practice, or is that more safe? Honestly, I don't know, but that's how this house did it. Not saying we have to always follow what other houses do, but that's what they did in this case. I'll stop real quick for any, because we're going to get into the site plan, the stormwater issues. Are there any questions so far about the elevations, or should I continue?
I don't have any questions. Does anybody else on the panel have any questions right now? If not, let's go ahead. Let's keep moving.
Sounds good. And looking at the between the site plan review and the concept stormwater management plan review, the biggest and looking at the stormwater aerial, we have Hastings Drive here. The area in the northeast corner of the lot is the highest point on the house on the lot. The southwest corner is the lowest. So currently speaking, water would drain on from 821 here. It would drain onto the site on the rear yard, and basically either go around the house, but definitely drain onto 818 Newcastle Drive. And looking at how the existing drainage area, so this is the existing house, and they do split an A and a B drainage sections. The new house, the staff's concern, there's 2 concerns on here. One is that the new footprint of the house is further towards this rear property line here. And there's also a patio as well. So they're really reducing the space that water has to flow freely. And although their detention area, which is in this drainage area A, which staff doesn't have any concerns with where that's being placed, and now take the full roof in, the concern really is that they are narrowing this area right here for water to kind of flow around. And when you channel something, the velocity kind of gets a little bit higher. So the velocity we would expect at this point would be much higher at that point. And I do like to point out that staff's concerned about the rate of velocity, although the water the petitioner's mentioning is actually being reduced in this drainage area B. You can see down here at the bottom, like the 100-year, the runoff flow is a 0.3 existing in that area, and under B now it's a 0.2. So they are noting that it is getting less at least. So. And finally, regarding stormwater, the concern really is when you have these lots that are higher and they drain onto this lot, and it kind of looks pretty flat in the back, but also this lot is lower than all 3 of these, so they're getting the brunt of more water. Is there a way, and this is existing, that's the subject lot right here, and this is the neighbor right here. Is there a way to channel water more towards the street rather than in this person's backyard to potentially create issues? And 2 other items to note, in this area here, there's a tree in the right of way. It looks like between the properties, eventually there becomes a little bit of a swale and water does come down, and it looks like you can see the erosion that's happening. So you can see the exposed tree roots, and as water, the curb is a little bit higher than the grade right here. So that probably would continue. So I don't know the solution, but staff is pointing it out, that that probably is more likely to continue, especially under construction when it's exposed, there's no grass. Secondly, the intersection staff's requesting these, at least the bush to be trimmed back or even removed because this stop sign is here, and actually the car I was driving that day is parked right behind here, and you can't even see the car. So that's where staff's asking that to be removed. The conditions of approval, there was a request for a street curb inventory on before they start construction on this. There's one about staff's concerns along the southeast lot. The sump pump, currently a sump pump's located right here, just again in that area that staff is most concerned about with the stormwater. And if that discharge is there, and a lot of these houses have sump pumps that run a lot. So, just to discharge that further away from at least the neighbor in front of their house, so it's not impacting them. They forgot to add a front sidewalk, so they need to add that. And the other items are the traditional items that the commission sees. With that, the engineer of the project is on the line, and I'm open for any questions or comments the commission may have at this time.
Those are good points, Jonathan. I think right now we'll open it up for discussion amongst the panelists and see if we can have some thoughts on that. Does anybody have any questions right now? Carol, I see you have some questions.
Are you there?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes. Okay. So, Jonathan, your concern with regards to the stormwater at the rear of the lot, is there a way to facilitate the runoff to the street instead of just to the back of the lot?
Yes, there are several options. Staff usually tries not to make the recommendation as to which method to do, but there's, let's say there's the option of possibly, and I don't know if this will work or not, but cutting a really deep swale, but I don't know with the grading if that's available. They did cut a minor swale here, but it's mostly in front of the house rather in the back area here. They could add a berm and possibly a drain pipe that will intercept the water's intercepted by the berm and hits the berm and kind of fills up just a little bit. And there's a drain there that then the drain is somewhere out here that just lets out water in the front. There's a French drain option as well that they can do. So there are options for that.
Okay, and just to be clear, at this time, the developer has not proposed doing any of those things?
The only thing, not the berm or the French drain, they do have just a small swale starting to probably the mid to the front of the house, but not in the rear, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any items to discuss before we bring the panelists on?
Chairman, I want to, if it's okay, to note the design issues that Jonathan's related to the commission regarding the Hastings elevation, which is a street side, and lack of the 50% masonry.
Yeah, Carlos, this is Mike. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to bring that up, but I was going to wait for the petitioner to be on board. But if we want to discuss that a bit now, we can. So.
I think we might as well have at least some initial discussions on some of these items before we bring the petitioner on. I know we're trying to expedite things, but I definitely think that's of a concern as well.
Well, there's three critical ones that I want to note that Jonathan brought up in his September review letter to the petitioner. So these are not anything new. They've been noted that from the staff perspective and our assessment and evaluation, there are concerns. One is the masonry along that right side elevation, which is along Hastings. The garage width and driveway width, which, you know, again, you know, this is a subdivision that does have some three-car garages, but this is a smaller lot. And thirdly, and I think most importantly, is the right south side elevation and how that transition occurs between the older house that's kind of now going to be nestled between two new homes. And I think that cross section perfectly illustrates the differences in transitions when you look at, you know, how these new homes impact some of the older existing housing stocks.
Yeah, those are good points. I definitely think, you know, at least needs to be an attempt to address some of those, you know, those items.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Mike. I would also add, I think the right and left elevation and the lack of design elements is going to be really accentuated by the amount of detail that's been paid attention to the front elevation, which has horizontal and vertical siding. It's got shake siding, it's got stone, it's got brick, it's got arches, it's got stone around the windows. So with everything that's happening on the front, and I think it's, in my opinion, it might be maybe a bit much. It's going to make those the left and the right sides even seem, I can't think of a better word than starker. And certainly the right side, which is facing Hastings, just sort of the lack of near the level of detail that's shown on the front elevation. So I'd like to see some of the expression that's on the front sort of spread out on the two sides, if you will. It's not very architecturally sounding, but I can't come up with a better way to say it at this point. So.
Good point. I concur with. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Mike, I just want to say I agree with you. To me, the front looks, frankly, kind of busy. Almost too much going on. And I think you're right. Compared to the front, compared to the sides, is a rather stark contrast.
How does everyone feel about the driveway? You know, in terms of, you know, straight 3-car entrance. You know, with, you know, that's a lot of pavement. Or you know, how Jonathan mentioned that it some areas where it starts out smaller and then expands to the 3, you know, 3 lanes, so to speak.
I would agree that it needs to be smaller. It'll help with stormwater management too as well. So I agree that we should limit that as much as we can.
Yeah, this is Mike. I would concur. You know, at the end of the day, that Hastings elevation is going to be appeared as a front elevation, and having it as a wider concrete. You know, so I think aesthetically having it tapered in some manner, and as Tim so correctly pointed out, it's certainly going to help with the stormwater, which, you know, as a community we're still struggling with. So.
One other question, is there any other questions or any other comments that we want to go over before we bring on the petitioner?
I just want to say I would agree with all of Jonathan's remarks, the other 2 items, as well as the driveway, and then Commissioner Saunders too as well. I agree with making some architectural elements on the side as well.
What do you guys think about that roof massing, you know, or the roof height, you know, and I guess massing? Is there a better way to transition that, so to speak?
Well, this is Mike. I think, again, there's examples in the community on how that could be done. And again, I don't, as Tim just pointed out, I think Jonathan said it correctly. It's, you know, there are ways to treat it, and it could step down at the ends versus those, you know, those high high gable ends, which, quite honestly are impacting the site elevations and some of the concerns of the site elevations too. So I think they could, with some better, I don't want to use the word better, for different treatment of the site elevations and the roof lines, it could help in both regards, both the site elevation appearances and the massing. So,
Jonathan, I have a question, and I was wondering if, this is in a neighborhood, so they have a neighborhood association. Has the neighborhood association reviewed these plans?
Not that I'm aware, but the petitioner is on and he might have, but not to my knowledge. Staff
Okay.
does send out notifications to at least properties within 300 feet, but staff hasn't heard anything from those notifications, but we also did not receive a trustee letter or anything.
Okay. Okay. So seeing no other comments, I think, Carol, did you have a question?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. So maybe we can bring the petitioner on to kind of further discuss these items.
Chairman, I'm transferring Ryan Meeks with THD Design Group.
Good evening, Commission.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Did you get a chance to listen to some of the discussions and some of the questions and concerns?
Yes, I did. I wanted to address first the stormwater issues. One thing that we did to address some of the concerns in response to the original comments from staff is we did add a swale, as Jonathan mentioned, along the south property line. And he mentioned that it's not a big swale, but a large swale was not needed because due to the fact that all the water from the roof is going to the detention flow well system, there's not a lot of water coming through the site on the east side and then along the south side. So the swale that I've shown there is sufficient to carry that water. And if you look at the southeast corner, I don't know if you can zoom into that, Jonathan. But as that water is coming down along the east property line to that southeast corner, there is a high spot there. You'll see a 690/630 elevation just before the property line, and then another 690/630 at the property line. And so that's to create a sort of a berm or high spot there that will force that water to the west along that south property line. And as far as the concern about the swale along the east property line being narrowed, due to the fact that the flow is decreasing or will be decreasing from the existing swale to the proposed swale, the velocity actually will not increase. It'll stay the same, because although the swale is getting smaller, it's getting narrower, the flow is decreasing. I ran those calculations, and I actually have those calculations in a PDF that I could show if I can share my screen. But the velocity actually will not be decreasing.
What's slowing the speed of the water down?
Well, as I mentioned, the velocity, or I'm sorry, the flow will be decreasing. So even though the width of the channel is decreasing, the flow is decreasing as well.
Is it because of the slope?
No, it's not because of the slope. It's because of because for the existing house, The downspout in the northeast corner is sending water to that channel or that swale. But in the for the proposed condition, all the water from the house will be
So you're saying there's
going.
less volume.
I'm sorry.
So you're saying there's going to be less volume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The flow rate will be lower, in large part due to the fact that there'll be less water coming from the roof. In fact, there'll be no water coming from the roof in the proposed condition. There is water coming from the roof through the downspouts, or at least through the downspout in the northeast corner in the existing.
Okay.
Flows through that swale.
Okay. I get that. What about the sump pump location? Or the sump pump discharge?
If that's a concern, we could pipe that towards the west property line so that it would flow out. That water would discharge and flow towards that southwest property corner.
Okay.
And it would be discharging well past the neighbor's house.
Okay. Before we move on to past the stormwater issues, does anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing with the sump pump in the way that he described,
Good.
the discharge. I think that's a much preferred addition.
I concur too. Okay, Ryan, can you go over some of the other concerns that we had?
Well, as far
Can
as
I ask a couple of questions, just
Oh,
for
sure.
some of the other commissioners' sakes on some of the terms used. When you note the flow rate, is that a measurement of volume or speed or a combination of both?
It's a combination of speed, so we normally measure it in cubic feet per second.
And that
So
volume
it's volume. It's volume over time.
So with the catchment of the roof area of the new home as opposed to the existing home that kind of just releases in there, you're saying that that amount, being that the roof area is being caught, the remaining area that's just, you know, of the site won't have the same speed because the volume is less. If you added more water to it, then the speed would increase.
And maybe it's a better term that the flow rate would decrease because the total volume of water should be less.
Correct. Over the same amount of time, the volume would be less.
Because one of the unique things in this design is that when you look at the figure C on there, and you go just directly to your right, there is a swell there in the rear yard of the property. That's pretty well defined, that 667, and you can see the 668 just adjacent there. But then there's there is the squiggly line and then the swell system that runs east to west there. And the impression is that this is supposed to do some 90-degree turn. Are those two separate two separate areas that are flowing differently? One is going north to south. It has nothing to do with what's along the side property line.
Well, they will be separate swales, so to speak, and that's why I was referencing the high point or the berm there in the southeast corner to keep that water from just continuing straight south towards that southeast corner, and instead it will be forced to go to the west because that will be the direction of of slope, of grade slope.
While, you know, we don't design that, we base it on the expertise of the petitioner and his team to put that design together, and if it works, because it is a very, you know, it's a quick shift or turn. It gets very critical that the final grade or the finished grades, or once all the work is done, that it matches what you have here in plan, and it leads to, you know, I think for us as the city to make sure that it is consistent with what you've designed, that we would want an as-built to make sure that the developer and his construction team put that in place, because we're talking about really small little, 696.3 to 695.6 to 695.3, these small things that, the grading of the lot, the sodding of the lot, and if they put sprinklers on the lot, can change this, I would assume.
Just let me throw out an idea, and I'm just throwing this out, but what if we put just a drain in the back there and directed it underground to the front and have it kind of, drain out closer? Would that be possible?
Are you saying a drain near the southeast corner that would,
Yeah.
and then it would pipe towards the west?
Right. Would that make you feel more confident that it's going to make that 90-degree turn?
I mean, personally, I don't feel that it's necessary. If it's something that the commission is requiring, that's something I could go back to the developer with.
Just trying to find a way to make sure we have good assurance that it's not going to necessarily impact the adjacent neighbors, and assurance it's going to make that turn, as well.
I mean, I could build that berm up more in that corner, and make that swale, a little bit deeper as it's going around the corner.
Carlos, what do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I think, and again, it's not a question of how the design is set. I'm more concerned about the person that's going to grade this, put this together, and then run sod over it, that they do it consistent with the plan, or that we verify that the end result is consistent with the designer's plan.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas on this before we move on to the other issues? Go ahead, Carol. I think you're talking.
No,
Oh, okay. I got a little note that said you were, so sorry about that.
go
Well,
ahead.
I think at the very least, yeah, I think getting that berm up more is going to be important. And then, well, like Carlos suggested, have an as-built. Consideration could be to putting in a drain or something like that and directed it through. But if you think you're sufficient with that, I think having that extra height there is going to be helpful for that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay, if you can address some of the other items that we were mentioning.
Yeah, as far as the driveway, yeah, we can certainly make that a 2-car drive at the entrance and then expand it out to a 3-car drive. That should not be an issue.
Okay, good. What about some of the concerns that were voiced regarding the Hastings elevation, which is where the garage is, about the brick?
Well, as far as the masonry, that's those are comments that would have to be directed towards the architect,
Okay.
and that could be, if those are going to be conditions of approval, then certainly I'm sure the architect will address those.
Well, you've heard some of the concerns that have been expressed, so I think that is going to be an impact, with that. Especially some of the, the articulation as well on the right side. I'm not sure if you can speak to that.
No, really, that's something that the architect will have to address also.
Okay. So if you can, we're also concerned about the, the massing, especially the impact to the adjacent house. So if you could talk to him about that, as well as, I think there's the exposed foundation too. There's a limit to how much foundation can be exposed as well.
Okay, well, as far as the exposed foundation, I'm sure the developer would likely be open to extending the siding down as much as would be requested, to make that aesthetically pleasing.
Okay. Do you know if you've had any discussions with the neighborhood association?
I'm not aware if the developer has had any discussions. I have not seen any comments or been made aware of any comments from the neighborhood association.
Most neighborhood associations have, conditions that they want to, look at the plans and have approval. So we'd like to encourage you guys to do that. It makes it easier for us, once we go through our process to make sure you guys are kind of following those procedures.
Sure, I'll make sure to follow up with the developer on that.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for the developer or for Ryan?
I just wanted to check with Ryan and just make sure he understood the concerns that some of the commissioners had expressed regarding the elevations, and was comfortable sort of communicating those to the architect.
Are you referring to the massing?
Well, both the massing and the design of the left and right, get my elevations right, the Hastings and the other side elevations, and some of the concerns we expressed. So, and Carlos, I don't want to put more on your plate, but if the architect has some concerns, would the city be willing to maybe pass those concerns on to the architect?
We will do.
Yeah. I just want, if we're going to bring this back in, I'd like to make sure some of our concerns are addressed with the next iteration. So.
Yeah, I know there was, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that I still think the front elevation is awfully busy.
I would concur. There's a lot happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as far as that, would there be recommendations for the architect, or you want the architect to come back with his own modifications as he sees fit?
I think the way it was expressed. Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, I don't have specific design recommendations. I'm not a designer.
I think the way some of the commission members, describe that is there's a lot of, there's a lot of detail and a lot of items going on the front elevations compared to the Hastings front elevation, as well as the right side elevation. So if there's way to spread those out a little bit, so it's not such as stark contrast. Is that a good way of expressing it, Mike?
Well, I think that's the beginning. I think it does start with the massing because that's going to help with the sides. So if we can address the massing issue, and there's certainly precedent on the street for doing that. It's up on the board now, or up on the screen now. And then, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of attention to detail in the front, and not as much on the two sides. And I think we would focus on, our attention would be focused on Hastings first, but we certainly don't want to disregard the other side elevation. But I do think it starts with just addressing the massing issues that have been brought up. So.
Okay, Carlos, right now, is there any public comments on this, or anybody else that had any comments for Ryan from the public side?
Chairman, at this point, I don't see any hands up. If you can just give me a minute.
No, that sounds good.
Right, Chairman?
Okay.
No hands were raised.
So Ryan, I think you got kind of, your things that are kind of our thoughts on this. I think right now we'll go ahead and table this item and see what you guys can bring back. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Understand.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. That being said, we'll move on to discussion items. Item A, urban agriculture, formerly quality of life items. City Council has requested the commission to review current regulations regarding certain urban agricultural activities and forward recommendations. Carlos.
Bear with me 1 second. I'll take it.
No worries.
Okay, Chairman, you received in your packets today some revisions regarding where we were at our last meeting. I'm just going to go quickly over some of the items in there back in the PowerPoint presentation. So bear with me. Okay. So we had a prolonged discussion at our last meeting regarding some of the definitions, and we were going to work with Mr. Brophy to help us or assist us in defining some of those, and we'll continue to do so in there. He was going to kind of reassess the number of definitions that were there and some of that wording. So we're working with him on that end. In there, the purpose and the intent, that's an important aspect of the ordinance. We did have some discussion before getting into the nuts and bolts of the descriptions, but at this point, we're trying to recognize that these type of activities are unique in a residential environment, especially in an urban setting, because they do require some balance regarding to how they impact the community character or the neighborhood. So the goal here is to establish some parameters that would minimize the disruptions, provide educational or assured information, and ensure that there's some type of exit strategy in the end. And then we got into the discussion of rearing of livestock, where we would authorize 6 chickens. We would prohibit roosters in there. And we talked about the apiaries, or the what they call the hives, and there was some discussion about setting some parameters to the overall size and height. And I think in your packet it'll show that we're looking at roughly about 20 cubic feet with a 5-foot high maximum. And that was pretty standard across for the standard hive container in there. And then I'm going to go to the write-up that you have, or the current staff report, which is posted now on the agenda. So again, limit chickens and hens to 6 and bees to 3 hives, each hive not exceeding 20 cubic feet or 5 feet in height. And then we still need to have a discussion, that those would be authorized uses, that those would be permits that we could administratively issue without having to go before the commission. And then we talked a little about the site plan review process, and this is still not set, but whether there would be anything that could exceed, or if something else comes up, if there would be a commission review process for that. So if somebody wanted to have either more, or somebody wanted to have something that we didn't think of in this process, or were directed from the council to consider, there would be a process to go through the commission. I'm not going to address the horticulture at this point right now. And then we talked about the permitting, and which leads to the roadification. But what you do have now within your packet is that you would have a informational handout and an application that would be issued in conjunction with this ordinance. So the ordinance would identify the limitation, let's say regarding the chickens, the 6 chickens, and then provide information about the application process, operating regulations, which go more into detail, which wouldn't be part of the codified code. They would actually be in the handout, noting regulations and other code references and all the other items that are important to be aware of in harboring chickens on a residential property. It would have references to the housing regulations, which are already part of the code regarding animal shelters, and there which we've already adopted in our accessory structures ordinance. And then other regulations as it regards to subdivision indentures, if the applicant isn't the owner of the property, and any violation of other ordinances and such. And then that the permit itself isn't transferable. If somebody were to sell the property or vacate the property, that permit, a new permit would be necessary if the applicant, if the new occupant would want to pursue or continue harboring chickens in there. And then this would be the signatures. This was pretty much a standard in terms of what was used in Richmond Heights, Webster Groves, and I think in Ladue, and there. And then we would provide some information regarding chicken care considerations provided by the Humane Society. Several municipalities had references to sections in the Humane Society about things that people should know about chickens, the process of adoption, and it also talks about the roosters in there. Chicken care essentials regarding temperature, regarding predators, the appropriate environments, veterinary care, vaccinations, nutrition, preventive disease, and the type of hours that are necessary, if you're going to be harboring or raising these chickens. Then we would provide a link back to these sections, and if somebody wanted to get more information. Same type of application would be done for the beekeeping, where it would note that you would need a review packet, how you apply, the fees, and information on what is necessary and how the permit is issued. Here I haven't expanded, but it would have the information. This one's a little bit more difficult to find communities that are providing operation and housing regulations. Then it would have the restriction on the structures and their sizes, and then again these general other regulations to ensure that you're compliant with other sections of the code, non-transferability, and the permit fees. The signature page, and then again providing tips for beekeepers. These are from the University of Missouri Extension. regarding, if you're going to be getting into beekeeping, information that you should be aware of regarding location placement, just similar to what was done for the harboring of chickens. And again, we would provide link information back to the MU extension for people if they wanted additional information or such. The goal with these applications, again, were to kind of address some of the comments and concerns that were expressed regarding this section of just saying limit six chickens and limit 3 hives. So again, we're trying to get more into the details of the operations in the housing and dimensions, but doing that in the application process as opposed to within the ordinance itself. So this information is all being introduced to you today. Again, the written aspect that I have was provided in your packet this afternoon. And if there's any specific discussions in there, or if there's some concerns regarding the direction, if we can go ahead and talk about that. And if not, we'll continue on with the next work session.
Carlos, I'm just curious. I understand the limit on the chickens versus roosters. And people have to say they're doing chickens, and I understand the ethical issue or the challenge of getting it, because the sex is not always known. What happens if someone gets it and they end up with a rooster? What's the expectation?
I think that through the permitting process, whether we don't find out at the beginning or when they come up for their permit in the following year, we would work with them, or to eventually they'll have to get rid of it in there, and we would work with them to establish some type of schedule for that. We're not saying that it has to be in terms of how it should be done, but I think the expectation is that within a reasonable time frame they'll find something suitable, another suitable place for them. And right now we're working with one property owner in doing just that. We went through different processes of trying to address the noise concerns that were expressed by some residents, and it looks like it was unsuccessful. That the next step is probably finding relocating a place for the roosters.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and the lawyers can answer this, if it's worth putting something in there. What does reasonable mean? Because that's subjective. For me, it might be 3 years. You might be 3 months, but I'll let the lawyers speak to that. So.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Carlos, I have a couple questions about beekeeping. Is there something in the ordinance that I missed, or in the draft, I should say? Do we talk about selling the honey from the bees? I know we talk about not selling eggs. We talk about not selling honey?
No, that's a good point, and we can add that into the application.
Okay. And then on the bees, if a neighbor has a bee allergy, I'm assuming that when someone comes in for a permit to set up some beehives, there's the opportunity for the neighbors to weigh in and make a comment about that. And that if somebody does have a bee allergy, that's going to eliminate the possibility of having a hive.
I think that one will probably require some type of legal discussion to get some direction of what, 2 components to that, whether that would be a means to deny the permit based on an adjacent, a condition of an adjacent neighbor, and under what circumstances, and 2 would be if if it should be based on
Sounds like it could be denied based on a health and safety issue.
Yeah, the key thing would be whether it's equitable, because I think that one requires a little bit more of a legal advice. It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. It's a very good legal question.
Well, I'm sensitive to it because one of my sisters has a bee allergy, and it's a very hazardous one for her. And I certainly wouldn't want to put an Olivet resident in danger because a neighbor decides they want beehives.
I think it's a good
And
point.
so, yeah, I mean, I think we need to have a process in place for dealing with that somehow.
And again, I think that's a good question. I don't know the answer. And again, it goes back to, again, if it becomes, you know, the commission as a whole could make a recommendation just not to permit bees at all for the purposes of that concern. Or two, whether it is based on some form of information of whether it's an adjacent property or property within a reasonable distance, if there is a bee allergy, and then does it take something that some type of verification, or is it just taken on word, you know?
But yeah, and the other problem that I honestly don't know how we deal with, but persons' allergic reactions can change over time. So, you know, one year I may not be allergic to bees, and the next year I might.
And it can increase in severity.
That's right. That's very true.
I think that's part of the annual application process too. Wouldn't that be? Couldn't that be addressed in that way?
It can. It just, the concern from my perspective is looking at it is then the goal, part of the goal here is to create some consistency in its application and its oversight. And, you know, I think the questions that have been noted are very valid. Is it, you know, in the city's best interest to even then to allow the bees? Is it something is it a business we want to get into, knowing that they're, you know, these kind of concerns, you know.
And then what if somebody, you know, moves in next door that has a significant bee allergy? And that could be an issue.
Yeah.
I do think maybe if we have, you know, the attorney take a look at that, or maybe address some of those issues, that might be helpful.
I agree. And I you know, it was difficult to find communities in, you know, within the region that had a process for beekeeping, and I can see why.
Yeah, right.
In there, but it'll something we'll bring to the council's attention and see if we can get some legal perspective on those questions and how that is. Because again, the goal here is to establish some consistency on how these applications and the oversight is set. And while I believe those are really good questions, you know, they also pose, you know, should, you know, they may weigh more to just prohibit them as opposed to trying to devise a way of allowing them, but not being, you know, not having a consistency or an assurance through the process. Because again, if a property owner moves or a new property owner comes in, or somebody develops an allergy or finds out they have an allergy over time, makes it difficult.
It does, but I think it's a critical question for us.
Absolutely. Okay.
I have a few questions or comments, but does anybody else on the commission, before I start asking these, have any other questions? Okay, one, Carlos, was Didn't we talk about having something, part of the application process that says once you kind of decide not to renew the permit, that there, the structures would have to be removed and with a follow-up inspection?
Yes, we did, and I don't believe that I have that in there. You're correct.
And
And
then,
that will be one of the, yeah, I just had the actual use and didn't reference the structures themselves. So we'll put that in.
and then just a thought on the guidance part. I think the guidance part is fantastic, a great addition. The only thing I have a concern is guidance always changes over time. And you don't want to necessarily be responsible for always providing the most updated guidance. So I would suggest you at least date it, the guidance, with a link that says check for updates.
Will do.
Then do we want to go in and have some further discussion on those items you listed as, items to discuss? Discussion necessary? I mean, I think we were kind of in agreement that the four-legged farm animals were not going to be allowed. Birds of prey, raptors, I mean, do we want to do that now? I think it might be a good idea, because one thing I was, we were trying to get this approved in October, and we are at the end of October, or, with our meetings. So I guess I had one thought is, if we're really just trying to finalize the applications and we pretty much have all the text amendment, items identified, maybe we could approve that and recommend it to the council and then still continue to work on the applications. Is that a possibility?
Rob?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? I really don't think we're far enough along for that yet.
Okay. I was just trying.
I think we're getting closer. And I'm pretty comfortable with the path we're taking, but I don't think I'm ready to just turn it over to council. I think we still have work to do.
Well, let's have a little discussion on some of those items that at least maybe we can, at least come consensus on some of those where Carlos listed discussion necessary. I think if we start at the bottom and work our way up, it might be easier. Is everybody in agreement that four-legged farm animals should not be allowed? Or without, site plan review or discussion? How's everyone?
Chairman, this is Mike. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to see see if we have a consensus already on that.
Yeah. I would agree, but I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know you were speaking. This is Tim. I just want to say I do agree with no four-legged farm animals.
Yeah. And Tim, I was going to say the same thing. The only issue I would have is the definition of pigs, because every once in a while you do hear stories about people raising, pet pigs, and whether we somehow denote that. I don't advocate it, but you certainly do hear that occasionally. But I would agree with what Tim just said.
I think we could amend it and say that I think there are more mini pigs. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but they're not the big pigs. And we could put a weight or however we want to say it, but I think they're talking about those little mini pigs.
Exactly.
They used to be called pot belly pigs back in the day.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
What if we limit it to pigs less than 25 pounds? Because we're talking about maybe water birds less than 25 pounds. So it
We
gives
like
you
it
the
farm
same
animals.
standard.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah, I think that,
Okay, how does everybody feel about birds of prey / raptors?
I think the challenge again is, would you consider a hawk a bird of prey? Would you consider a falcon? Would you consider a raptor? Because I agree with raptors, but I had someone in my neighborhood who had a hawk, a couple hawks.
We know.
And the bunnies spayed in my backyard proved it too. But you know, I think my concern is if we leave it broad, you know, and I agree with the pigs on 25 pounds, but it may not be 25 pounds when they get as a baby, but what if it ends up being 30 pounds? Or do they not make the permit and then they have to have it for bacon? You know, like what's the, you know, of course not. So I think if the challenge is leaving it too vague leaves us open to challenges, but leaving it too precise leaves us open to exceptions that we can't grant. So I wonder if it's better. I don't know. I guess I'm curious what the lawyers say in terms of, do we say no farm animals unless you get site plan review and then we make decisions? Or do we get very specific? It's tough.
It is tough. Or maybe we could say less than 25 pounds as an adult, you know, or something to that extent.
Agreed, but it's, if they get it as a baby, who knows how big it's going to get?
Good point. Very good point. Very good point.
Well, then you keep the baby, but when it gets to be an adult and it's 40 or 50 pounds, you can't keep it anymore.
Yeah. I guess if they know that, but maybe we put that language in there that if it gets above a certain amount, you have to get rid of it. But that's tough. It's a pet at that point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree. It's just the challenge. So.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe it would then have to go back to a review process at that point in time. But you know, if you get something that big, there's going to have to be some additional assurances that it's being properly maintained and also not impacting the rest of the neighborhood.
And we would also need a way to weigh it.
And I just looked up online for a potbelly pig, and adult potbelly pig could weigh 100 pounds.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's 14 to 20 inches in height.
I think you're referring to a teacup pig.
A teacup, is that what we're looking for?
I think that's the one. Those are the little ones in the purse.
That's definitely not.
It can't be bigger than 5 inches high.
Again, I think that the intent of the, you know, there are the authorized uses, which are the uses, of course, that the council's asked us to address, and that there was consensus within what limitations would be acceptable, you know, that 6 chickens and 3 hives. But, you know, trying to look at this as a broader ordinance, you know, other animals will come up over time. And the intent here was to provide that outlet through a site plan review process. But, you know, ordinances, we always refer them to as being organic. They are built and designed to change over time. If they don't, things become static, and static's not always good. So if at some point we have somebody that wants to have any of these under the discussion items, you know, they can go back and address the council and or submit for a text amendment to the Plan Commission, and we can review it no differently than we have for chickens in there.
How about this, Carlos? How about we, in the prohibited section, we just say four-legged farm animals greater than 25 pounds. You know, the water birds greater than 25 pounds. List those as prohibited. Leave anything else that's less than 25 pounds part of the site plan review.
And that'll be fine.
And then part of the site plan review, we can kind of discuss how big they're going to get.
Well, and I think that's where the discussion would happen, and there's where the limitations would be put in place. Just because somebody would go through site plan review does not and should not exempt them from either some type of annual review or a resubmission every so often to update the commission on the progress or the changes of some sort. Or even if it's done administratively and we have an authority, you know, to add another 10 pounds, but after it hits a certain point, we have to bring it back, you know, in there. We'll give it a little bit more thought or consideration. I think the council's goal is that those authorized uses for sure. I think from my end is, you know, knowing that we can't just close out everything else. Somebody's going to come up with something different and unique, and we're going to have that discussion again.
Right. Okay. Were there any other items that we wanted to further discuss? I think we kind of hit on pretty much everything other than doves and pigeons, but I think in that it seems to be fine in that location where it's at now, unless anybody else had any questions or concerns about it.
Carlos, does St. Louis County have a similar ordinance for us to take a look at?
I'll check to see, but remember the county has quite a bit of range in lots and land uses. What I provided you in the packets, and they're on the agendas. Now I'm not printing them out every time, but you have Shrewsbury, Ladue, Webster Groves, Rock Hill, Richmond Heights, and then a couple of other Missouri communities, and then some other communities throughout the United States for reference. If there's anything else that you'd like or a specific section for us to take a look, we'll do so. I'm a little uncomfortable with the county because, again, the county is not reflective of the suburban urban character of all of that.
Not at all.
Right.
But sometimes they have language that is very helpful.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes not, but they might.
Carlos, I also saw that there was a question from
Yes.
one of the
I can go ahead and read the question in. We had a question regarding whether existing hives, roosters, coops, etc., have to become compliant with the new requirements, and is there a time frame? And my assumption would be yes. There would be. They would have to become compliant, and there would be some form of a time frame, but we haven't gotten to that aspect yet.
I think if we matched kind of a time frame that's well, I'll leave this up to discussion, but 30 days or match what you typically do for other building permits or other building violations would probably be appropriate unless there's a significant health and safety issue.
And I think we've had the internal staff discussion about this, and it would be something I would like the commission when a motion is forwarded to the council of whether there should be an inventory conducted of where any of these uses are currently active. Notifications should be provided and opportunities for their comments to come in and be addressed or know when that public hearing is occurring, and what the those that may exceed the standards, to look into how, engaging with them of how they're going to address it, or so.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Chairman. I just want to swing back around to bees real quick. and regarding the neighboring property, the city of Poplar Bluff, this is how they put theirs. They have an automatic distance requirement from the neighbors, and then the code for them says the distance requirement shall be enforced with the exception of an adjacent property owner or occupant who may request in a written affidavit to the city manager that the distance requirement be waived pertaining to their property line. And the affidavit may be voided at any time upon request of the owner or occupant. So there's a standard setback that's enforced, but if they basically have to check with the neighbors. So if we put, I honestly am not a bee expert, and I don't know how far bees generally travel, but if there was, like, let's say, I'm just going to make up a number, 50-foot setback for bees, but then the neighboring properties signed that waiver saying, hey, we don't mind, or then they would have a lesser of a setback at that point. So that's just what I found on Poplar Bluff, but otherwise everyone else really doesn't have anything concerning a neighbor except for maybe an annoyance or stinging or safety issue, but nothing to do with an allergy at this point. So I'll keep looking, but that's
Okay.
the only thing I found.
Great. Anybody else before we move on?
Does all of that still have a critter control group or department, or? Because I know there's some wild foxes that kind of roam around Olivet.
Yeah.
And some deer probably too.
No, we didn't replace the person who was Roman, who retired about 2 years ago, but usually that's now animal control or through county or something, so not all of that anymore.
Okay. I think we've kind of, I guess, moved as far as we could on this. I appreciate everybody's efforts and comments so far. So, is there any other public comments, or do you see any hand raised, Carlos?
Give me 1 second, seeing if there's any other comments from the public. Chairman, seeing none at this point.
Okay, great. Well, we'll move on. We're going to table stormwater management for now. We might circle around back, but being that it's already getting late, I think we're going to table that for the next meeting. Let's move on to other business. Item 7A, which is 9398 Olive Boulevard, the Firestone. It's related to building material changes. Carlos, are you handling this?
Yes, bear with me and let me get that up. Okay, Chairman, back earlier this summer, these are the approved finished elevations for the Firestone facility that will be located at the southeast corner of Olive and Dealman. This would be the south elevation facing the interior of the property. This is the Olive Boulevard elevation facing Olive, and then of course you have the west and east elevations respectively here. The original elevations identified or illustrated in the cross sections that the finished materials were going to be either CMU block on the base, or the architectural block on the base, and then masonry being used in all the other areas with some EFIS highlights on certain sections. The petitioner has asked that they would like to switch, instead of using the standard masonry, to the Chaha system, panel system, which is a masonry panels in lieu of the actual masonry. Looking at the code and what is permitted under code, Chapter 428 identifies what materials are acceptable or are considered acceptable for use for a primary finish of an elevation. And that includes the masonry as the original elevations you see here, and the cement-based panel systems that they would like to utilize here, and I'm going to show you in this elevation. Essentially, the elevations would remain the same, except instead of using modularized brick, it would be a panel system in place of that. And it is an acceptable form of finish, exterior finish, under our code. And we have used these type of panel systems in previous approvals, both with the easy storage and also with the city center, the Oliver development in there. Because there was, it was a material change, but a material change within those that are acceptable within the parameters of the code. I wanted to bring it back to the commission so they would be aware of those changes. There was a couple of questions we had discussed with the developer regarding that, especially on the notations here about the insulated walls. That would be a Nichaha system, but the walls themselves would be insulated in there. The other question we had asked was regarding those columns that you see here. What would be the reduction in depth, versus a standard masonry to the Nichiha system, and it would be less. You would be going from, let's say, a little over 3 inches to about an inch in that depth, so that shade and shadow wouldn't be as significant as you see there. And right now it's probably highlighted more. And what I'm referring to is, I'm going to get into this detail here, is this bump out. This would be a standard masonry bump out. Now with the Nichiha system, you would have a panel and then a smaller bump out with another panel placed in there, and then the step back of the other panel in that place.
How much of a difference will that make? I mean, can they just bump that?
Yeah, that would. This is Mike. That would make a huge difference. I mean, part of it is the bump out. Even when it was brick, it wasn't just a course of brick out from the face of the face brick. It was in that detail you just saw. Yeah, so it's almost not even worth doing it if it's only going to be the thickness of the panel.
Did they say why they wanted to change it?
A majority of it is due to costs.
Yeah.
And materials.
Well,
and again, this is unacceptable. I'm not sure if, it's a discussion for the commission. If this, the new community center that the city is doing is being made of the same panelized type of system. If it would have been illustrated at the beginning, whether that it would have even been an issue, because from the staff perspective and from the report, we would identify that it's an acceptable material. Now,
Carlos, this is Mike. I don't disagree.
Some of the depths. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't disagree with that. It's more of the application of that material. And if you go back to the detail you just had up there, the pilasters that you're talking about work because of the depth and the shadow line, and they can certainly do that in Nichiha as well as they can do it in masonry. The issue is the corners of the Nichiha and how they turn those corners, because and Tim, you might have more experience with that material than I do. We've used it a few times, but I don't know that they make corner materials. So a lot of times there's a metal piece that they'll use to turn the corner. It could be finished the same as the Nichiha, but it's irregardless of whether it's brick or nichia panels, what makes those pilasters work is the depth and the shadow that they provide on these elevations. So it's more than just changing the materials. You are changing the design of these elevations also. If they weren't going to, make those pilasters as deep as they originally proposed.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I really agree with Mike. I think a big part for me of this design is the texture that you get visually when you see the bump outs. I'm sure I'm not using the best architectural term, but it helps give the whole facade depth. And it seems if I don't want to lose that. I mean, I don't know anything about Nietzsche, and that part is frankly immaterial to me. I just don't want to lose the depth of has been presented to us. So if they can use the Nietzsche but provide us with the same design, the same facade that we're looking at, that's fine with me.
Right.
But I don't want to accept less.
Tim, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So Nietzsche is a great product. I would have told you guys before I saw that I would use it. I've used it a lot. It's a quality product. It looks great, everything like that. What the builders is probably, the problem with what they're probably doing is if you don't make those columns wide enough, you won't have enough of a Nietzsche panel to show on the side of it. So they're probably in a predicament. Either you make the columns deeper, or you put them as a flat surface, basically almost a flat panel going across there. So my recommendation would be to make them, if they had to do it, say we want them at least that deep or bigger than they were previously on the elevations, and approve the Nietzsche and the insulated panels throughout.
That's good.
I could do that.
Yeah.
And
Carlos,
can you repeat you mentioned the dimension. Can you repeat that again?
I was just saying that I think that we need to say to the people that are bringing that we want the columns to be at least as deep as they are that you submitted, or deeper. If you have to put them deeper towards the building or away from the building to make those panels work out correctly with their trim, then that would be acceptable as well.
The other discussion, and Commissioner Saunders, Commissioner Spiegelglass, if you can kind of expand a little bit more. We talked to them about the corners. Now, when I'm talking about corners is here where the building changes planes, or within here where the Nietzsche systems, generally you have two planes coming in, and they're indicating that now that they can actually have either the Nietzsche makes a corner piece application, so you don't have 2 points that kind of in, and then you have some type of
Caulking.
putty in the middle or something like that.
Filler.
Correct.
Yeah, I would like to see using the pieces that come from Nietzsche that matches that existing siding to cover those corners.
And
yeah, if they make a cementitious corner, that would be preferred. I've seen it done, like I said earlier, with metal trim also, that you'll see used a lot with Hardy also, and Nietzsche to turn, to create those corners. But yeah, if Nietzsche now makes pieces that create those right angles, that would be great. I absolutely 100% agree that's preferable.
Does that only apply to when the angle's kind of an exterior angle as opposed to here when in an interior angle?
They have both products, and in that interior angle before they made that product, they used to do what Mike said is put at least a piece of steel, stainless steel or a piece of steel that goes down there to protect that corner.
Yeah. Carlos, can you go back to the three-dimensional image too? So the other thing that strikes me, and I'd like to get some input, is that base does have some texture to it. And again, Nichia is a cementitious material that comes in, you can get it in any color you want. You can get it pre-finished in almost any color that Sherwin-Williams makes. They also comes textured. Are they proposing to do a different type panel at the base that has the texture that was in the original plans or elevations versus the, just provided it in a different color? Or do we know?
No, we don't know, but the expectation that I would be looking for, that it would have been a split face, similar to a split face exterior here, and different from, the grooves would be different from this here color and that. Is that what you're? It kind of goes to like the residential building elevation we looked at a while ago. The texture, the expectation here is that they're not asking to change the texture or the color of the base from this brick area or this brick area. My expectation is that, this is still going to look similar and have the similar texture. And then this will look, these two would be the same type of paneling systems, but one would be beige, one would be the terracotta, and they would look like brick. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the panels just come with different surface finishes, and Tim, maybe you can do a better job of describing it than I can. But you get smooth, you can get them with texture, you can get them with with fake wood graining on them if you want. It's it is going to be a different pattern though. These are, what are they, 30 by 60? I think, Tim, maybe you would know better, but yeah. They
come in different ways, but yes.
Yeah, they come, but you aren't going to get the fine, it's going to be different than brick. Now, I 100% agree with the comment that it's a great material, and we've used it very successfully, and it looks terrific. And we drive around all these, you see them used a lot. But yeah, the fact that base had some texture to it and the product above it was maybe a smoother texture. I just wanted to know if they were sort of keeping that same theme was the question I was asking.
I think our goal would be to make sure that it is.
Yeah.
I think they're going to have a tough time doing that with the lower section, and that may be what the commission decides, is that they have to keep the lower brick and give them the rest of the panels and the Nichi high above that wainscot of the brick.
So they can have that CMU veneer on the base, and then the Nichi high system above that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you'd end up with a sill. Wouldn't be the same plane then. You're going to have, they would have to address the fact that there would be a sill, so there'd have to be some sort of sill or flashing on it for the transition, but they could do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it looks like don't they have a ledge there on top of that stone?
Well, they do. Remember, these are still under the assumption that this is the standard masonry, and so is the elevations I show here, or the floor section.
Yeah.
Do you have a cross section of that?
No, at this point, no. Just the request to switch to the Nichiha panel.
Okay. I assumed it was a 4-inch split face with the standard masonry above it, and so it was all basically in the same plane. Is the way I understood they were presenting it to us. You can sort of see it if you look at the side elevations. You can't, and again, it's a weird scale, but you don't really see the side sort of step out. Right there, exactly.
Yeah.
Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm wondering if it might be advisable, given that we have so many questions, to have the applicant come to our next meeting with samples and a better description of what they're proposing. So we have a chance to talk with them directly.
I think that might be a good idea. And maybe if they could just, if they're going to switch the texture or, come up with it, that we can see what that's going to look like.
Right, right. And it'll give us, particularly Mike and Tim, a chance to ask them some of these detailed questions that we have no clue about.
And I think Carlos can, express some of the ideas that were kind of mentioned, the concerns about the depth, the concerns about, the turns, things like that.
Right, that's exactly.
I think a cross section of that wall, Carlos, would help as well.
Mhm.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other further discussion? Otherwise, we'll move on. Hearing none, let's move on to item B, which is 9473, 9495, and 9499 Olive Boulevard. The Oliver, AKA City Center Redevelopment Area. I didn't realize the name changed. Carlos?
Chairman. All right, bear with me 1 second. And one of the final aspects for the approval was for the petitioner to bring in the final landscape plan for the development. And these have been posted on the city's website. The final landscape plan kind of articulates the city streetscape in accordance to Chapter 428, where you have the tree separation, you have the curve, the transition area, the pedestrian pathway that runs along Olive Boulevard. Those are all dictated and outlined by code. Then you have the landscaping along the perimeter of the building. You have now some of the internal landscaping that they would propose. These are not code dictated that are here in the interior. You would have the sidewalk along Fries here, and then around the perimeter of the building. And then we requested that they provided a pedestrian pathway along the edge. They're still using the existing masonry wall that was part of the old city development, and then they would place the landscaping here, and then here. And then they removed the screen wall or the fencing wall along the side, so it wouldn't, so the landscaping wouldn't be cut off from the drive entrance into the Tower Hill condominium complex back here. I think right here is where they have the dumpster location and such, and that's why you had that screen fence or so. One of the goals was just so the sites were not too, lack of a better word, too independent from one another, where there would be a potential or possibility to interconnect the sites if the condominium development would like to do so in there. The one thing that we've been working with the petitioner is, again, they're providing, they will have the parking place perimeter here. Then they're going to have the plantings and landscaping here, and then they will be providing a privacy wall along this area. We've kind of talked to see, we probably have to have an exchange with the representatives of the Tower Hill complex of if there would be an opportunity to remove the privacy wall and either not do some type of fencing is required because there is a pool back there. But it would be a shame to put a privacy wall, all this landscaping in the middle, and then the garage structure, and none of it be seen. They were willing to even look at putting an ornamental, an iron ornamental fence along the perimeter that would serve the purposes of the pool enclosure in lieu, as opposed to hiding all the landscaping in there. And of course, one of the other big items in this landscape plan is that they've removed the dog park that they had shown here. It used to be over here, and then it was relocated over here. Now it is going to be located here at the center of the site for the occupants of the apartments, as opposed to having it back here. There was some concerns from the Tower Hill condominium owners about having the dog park that close to the property line.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
All right. Any questions or comments on this?
Carlos, I was unclear. Where did they land on the fence along the back property line?
That's one of the things I'd like to get some input. They're willing to put the screen wall along here, and it's a requirement of the code, and the planting. But it'd be a shame to put all that landscaping and then not. And
I
then
like the
cover it up.
idea. I like the idea of the ornamental, if they're willing to do an ornamental. But is that something that we sign off on, or?
If the commission would be okay, they're willing to approach the condominium complex for that replacement.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. I mean, it would just be a huge waste of, of planting and you worry sort of about some of that planting surviving back there because it's going to be in the shade most of the time anyway. So hopefully a lot of that is shade tolerant, but at least it's just not going to be that dead alley space if you do a privacy wall in that garage. That's going to be a pretty rough area, and for security purposes, keeping it open too would be a huge advantage by having an open fence. So.
Now, one of the things I'm hoping is now that the forms of the foundation are being put in place, that people will get a better idea and comprehension of what that height will be. That it won't be as extensive, because they are 4 feet below grade at that back corner. And then there's only really one more ramp above the base ramp. We'll get a better idea of what that actual height is, and maybe there'll be a little bit more comfort with the adjacent property owners. And I think a lot of that concern is that unknown of though we know the height in paper, but what does it look like in reality? And we're getting there.
The only other question I had is along Olive Street. Do we have any input on the type of trees that go along Olive? Does the city have some standards on the trees that they use along Olive?
Yeah, they're noted within the code itself, and there is a key part of the. I don't have the key reflected here in the PowerPoint, but there is a key and a legend in what's attached to the agenda.
So it's consistent with what we're trying to do down the rest of Olive?
That is correct.
Yeah.
I have a real basic question regarding the planting schedule that's listed, and it's where it says the size. And some of them list the size in feet, some listed in inches. I'm assuming that the inches is the size of the trunk. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It'd be the caliper. That's what
And usually it's the deciduous trees that are listed in inches by caliper, and the coniferous that are generally shown in height. That includes any shrubbery that you'll see it in terms of
I appreciate the education.
You also will get it in gallon sizes too, 1 gallon, 2 gallon too, but that's, yeah. So.
Sorry about that. I was going to put up the, here we go.
Okay, any other further discussion on that?
Chairman, we do have one hand raised, I believe, for that.
Oh, okay. It looks like it's Miss Sondak.
All right, Ms. Sondag, you should be on. Chairman, you can just bear with me.
No worries.
All right, there we go.
Going here, it's disgusting. Some men do it for another woman. Well, I can understand that. That's normal.
Barb, your audio's on, but the video's not. At this point, Chairman, are there any other questions? Give her some time to log in. I show the mic is unmuted.
I'm sorry?
There you
Hello?
go. We can hear you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't have, I had left the room for a moment, so.
Okay,
Did you have a question?
Barb,
Did I
did
have
you
a question?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
It showed that your hand was up, Barb.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was a prior issue, but that's fine.
All right.
I apologize.
All right, anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, let's move on. Do we have any meeting minutes?
Chairman, I do believe that there was a set of minutes that were part of your packet. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Yes, sir, for October the
For the
1st.
October 1st meeting?
I am working electronically, so I don't see those. Would somebody acknowledge or take a look at it and then see if we can acknowledge receipt of that? That would be fantastic.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to acknowledge receipt of the meeting minutes from October 1st, 2020.
So made. That's great. Okay, we'll go on
Hey,
to.
Mr. Chairman, before we go on from the city center though, Carlos, do we have to make a motion on approving this landscaping or make a motion on that rear fence, or do you have the direction you need?
I think I have the direction I need. The plan was approved based on the landscape plan being resubmitted to the commission before installation, and that's what we have done.
Yeah, and I would just say, personally, I'd highly recommend we go to some sort of ornamental fence along that back north property line.
It makes sense to me, and I concur with that if you need it. And, okay, so I think we'll move on to reports. And Carlos, we'll go to your report first.
All right. Just a couple of items regarding schedules, and I got somebody's microphone is on, so I'm just going to do a quick mute here. All right. The council dates, they're meeting next Tuesday for October. November schedules the 3rd, the 10th, and the 24th, and then December is the 1st, the 8th, and tentatively, I would assume the 22nd. For the commission, our next date is November 5th, followed by 19th. Then we have December 3rd and the 17th. There are no observances that fall under either of those 4 dates, so we should be proceeding as normal. And then, of course, for 2021, which is just around the corner, we have our meeting on January 7th and the 21st. Regarding city events, the Dealman Road closure continues. There'll be an additional 2 to 3 weeks from this date. Of course, it closed late September. as they're working on the platform over the culvert, or where the creek passes just south of the pedestrian trail. Ashby Road Bridge, again, we checked with county, and all we've gotten is that the bridge that would go from along Ashby Road to Page should be completed by the end of the year. Registration has opened for the 7th annual Turkey Trot. Regarding COVID-19, the same updates, mandatory masks within the city facilities. All restrooms and play equipment are now accessible and, for the public, and municipal court is being conducted virtually. Don't forget, this Saturday is a drive-in movie at Stacy Park. The presentation will be The Goonies, and you can register via the Park and Rec's website. October 24th is National Drug Take Back Saturday. That will be held here at the Olivet Center. And then November 3rd being Election Day. And then the following week, November 7th, will be e-waste, docu-shred, and prescription drop-off, an event being hosted here at the City Center at 1140 Dealman Road. There is a scheduled Zoom with the mayor, I believe is next week, where there will be updates regarding the implementation of the Parks Master Plan. I don't have the exact date. I know an update was sent, and we'll try to get that for you before the end of this meeting. And then Mr. Roper has coordinated the Zoom with the mayor for November 10th, where the host will be Rob Kennedy of the Missouri Botanical Gardens to have a discussion regarding rain gardening. Update on the census figures, which of course it is now ended, and you can see the updates. For Missouri, we were ranked 27th nationwide for response rates. St. Louis County was ranked 4th in the state of Missouri for response rates, and Olivet we ranked 41st for response rates within the state. Updates on development: the Olive Crossing, the Metropolitan Sewer District is continuing construction on 2 sanitary relief lines, one heading north, one heading south on the site. Those should be nearing completion. On the Plant Haven Commercial Center, the building permits have been issued, or they're completed and are ready to be issued. On the City Center, which is now known as the Oliver, the footing and foundations are being worked on as we speak. It's pretty interesting to see on the site and how that's progressed. Easy Storage, it's a slow progress, but they're still committed and continuing to work towards developing that site. They did clean up the mound a couple of weeks ago, and again, they're working to get through some obstacles before they start construction. And then Firestone, of course, you saw the updates. We'll have them at our next meeting, and then it's my understanding that the Zoom with the mayor will be on October 27th, and it is Beverly Tucker Knight will be the mayor's guest to update our community regarding the implementation of the Parks Master Plan and Community Center. If there are any other questions, or Jonathan, is there anything else you want to note? And there, let me know.
I'll let the council liaison go first, and then I'll go.
Good evening, everybody. I really have nothing to report. Mr. Trejo does a fine job with a summary of council activities, city events, developments, and your next upcoming meetings. So I will leave it at that. Thank you all for what you do and the service you provide to the city. You know what I like to complain about, but I won't.
All right, and I'll take a few items. One, last week it was well, 3 items, I guess. Last week it was the American Planning Missouri State Conference, so attended that, and went to sessions, and some are also online that we'll need to watch soon, so hopefully bring back a lot of good information. One item was about assessing on trees, which was awesome, so we'll look at implementing and discussing with the commission some stuff. There's an author, Colin Gordon, who has wrote the book Citizen Brown, also another one, Mapping Decline, back in 2009. The American Planning Association is having him speak virtually. It's it's around noon on Wednesday. And the significance of this, he looks into Elmwood Park, which is just north of the train tracks at Dealman, other places like Meacham Park and Kirkwood, and discusses history, but it's more about how, I guess it's a historical look, but it also looks at, how far all of that has come, and rocky history, but to be proud and going forward in the future and with our decisions. But he'll be on just this Wednesday. And finally, it's National Community Planning Month. So as the commissioners of the Planning Commission, I want to just recognize the outstanding job that you guys do every 2 times a month, which, it's more than that because you guys have a lot of staff reports and other things to read. And thank you for being enthused on this commission, and thank you for, just even with the houses that we saw earlier, asking different questions to make the architecture and the design of the community much better. So thank you very much for that. And I'll leave it at that.
And Jonathan, can you note it's not just Jonathan Roper, the city planner, that's informing you. It's Jonathan Roper, the president of the State of Missouri American Planning Association, that is expressing his appreciation.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
All right. Carol, can you hear me?
The host would like you to unmute your microphone.
Okay, Carol, you're on.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want me to wrap things up?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Just conclude the meeting.
Does anybody have anything else? Okay, hearing none, we'll adjourn for the evening.
Good night, everyone.